Arizona grows rubber. Arizona grows wine. Arizona grows the lettuce in your fridge right now. This is a state with 4 deserts and almost no rain, and yet it has become one of the most productive farming states in the country. 10 crops, none of them make sense. Let's count them down. At number 10, we have a plant most people have never heard of called Guayule. Right now, tire companies are farming it commercially in the Arizona desert. That sentence alone should stop you cold. Because rubber does not come from deserts. Except now it does. Guayule is a tough desert shrub that produces natural rubber, not synthetic rubber made in a lab. Real natural rubber. The kind the world depends on for tires, surgical gloves, and industrial products. Almost all of it normally comes from tropical trees in Southeast Asia. During World War II, the U.S. supply of rubber from Southeast Asia was cut off completely. The government responded by planting about 30,000 acres of guayule across Arizona to produce rubber for tanks and planes. The desert became an emergency supply chain, and it worked. The plant never fully disappeared after the war ended, but recently it got serious attention again. Bridgestone, one of the largest tire companies on the planet, now operates a commercial farm in Eloy, Arizona. They are not running experiments. They are scaling up for real production. There is a second angle here that has nothing to do with tires. Guayule produces a hypoallergenic form of rubber. People who react badly to conventional latex can safely use products made from it that pulls in serious demand from medical manufacturers on top of everything else. Guayule is also drought tolerant by nature. It evolved in the Chihuahuan Desert. It does not need irrigation the way other crops do. That makes it a rare fit for a state that is always fighting over water. The plant is almost purpose-built for Arizona, growing natural rubber in a state that gets 6 inches of rain per year, supplying tire factories and hospitals from desert scrubland. Number 10 already breaks every assumption about what a desert can produce. Number 9 is going to do the same thing with wine. Coming in at number 9 is Arizona wine. That phrase probably made you stop, because when people picture wine country, they picture rolling hills in France or the California coast. They do not picture cactus and triple-digit heat. But Arizona has a real wine industry. In 2025, Arizona wine growers were cultivating nearly 80 different grape varieties. In 2023, the industry generated $351 million in economic output. This is not a novelty operation running out of someone's backyard. It is a legitimate agricultural sector drawing serious investment and attention. The reason it works is elevation. Arizona has 3 major grape growing regions: the Sonoita and Elgin area in the south, the Wilcox region in Cochise County, and the Verde Valley in central Arizona. Vineyards sit between 3,800 and nearly 6,000 feet above sea level. At that elevation, something important happens. Days stay hot enough to ripen the grapes fully, but nights drop sharply and slow everything down, locking in the acidity that makes wine complex. That temperature swing between day and night is something winemakers around the world actively chase. Researchers who have studied these regions say the conditions in places like Wilcox and Sonoita match some of the best wine-growing areas in France and Italy. That is not a marketing claim. That is a direct comparison built on climate and soil data. Arizona wine is showing up in fine restaurants and winning awards. The state most people associate with dust and extreme heat is quietly producing bottles that belong on a serious dinner table. Number 8 feels just as strange, but involves a completely different kind of crop. Number 8 is pecans. Pecans feel slightly more plausible than wine, but here is the part that stops people cold. Arizona is home to the world's largest irrigated pecan orchard. Not one of the largest on Earth, sitting in a state with 4 deserts. The orchard belongs to Green Valley Pecan Company south of Tucson. Pecans are grown across 22,000 acres in Arizona, and the industry brings in tens of millions of dollars in revenue every year. Arizona ranks 4th in the entire country for total pecan production. The reason pecan trees thrive here is the sunshine and temperature swings. Pecan nuts need long, hot growing seasons to develop fully inside their shells. Arizona summers deliver that without fail. The same brutal heat that punishes most crops is exactly what pecan trees are waiting for. There is also a disease advantage. In wetter climates, pecan growers fight fungal infections and insects that multiply in humidity. Arizona's dry air shuts most of that down before it starts. Farmers here spend far less time managing disease and far more time just growing nuts. The world's largest pecan orchard in a four-desert state yields going up every year. Arizona is not a footnote in the pecan industry. It is one of the most productive regions anywhere. Number 7 tells a very similar story with a closely related crop. At number 7 we have pistachios. Like pecans, they are a tree nut, and like pecans, they do surprisingly well in Arizona's heat and dryness. Pistachio acreage in Arizona sits around 10,000 acres, concentrated mostly in the southeastern corner of the state. Cochise County is the center of this industry. The county sits above 4,000 feet elevation, which gives it a high desert climate that pistachio trees specifically need. It is also a recognized center for fruit and tree nut production, with pistachios, pecans, and wine grapes all growing there. Pistachio trees are demanding in a specific way. They need hot summers and genuinely cold winters to produce well. That combination triggers the tree's biology. A mild winter means a poor harvest. Cochise County's sharp seasonal swings deliver exactly what the trees are looking for. The high elevation also keeps summers slightly cooler than the low desert. That matters because extreme sustained heat without relief can stress the trees during key growth windows. The 4,000-foot baseline gives growers just enough buffer while still hitting the heat totals the crop needs. Arizona's pistachio industry is small compared to California's dominance nationally, but it is real, it is growing, and it is built on the same counterintuitive logic as everything else on this list. The conditions that seem wrong turn out to be exactly right. Number 6 is different though. Number 6 is the one crop on this list where Arizona's climate actually makes obvious sense on the surface. Dates. They come from the Middle East. They grow in intense desert heat. Arizona's a desert with intense heat. So far so logical, but the scale is what surprises people. Arizona ranks second in the United States for date production, and the world's largest date plantation is located inside the state. Yuma is the center of commercial date growing, with large-scale operations producing dates for national markets and boutique groves scattered across the state. Date palms are not just heat-tolerant, they actually require extreme heat to produce fruit properly. They need long summers with sustained high temperatures that would destroy most other crops. Arizona's desert delivers that every single year without variation. The palms are essentially at home here. Some Arizona date groves offer more than 24 distinct varieties. Medjool dates, the large soft ones found in specialty stores, are one of the most valuable. Arizona's conditions produce dates that are considered premium quality, which drives interest from buyers looking for the best available fruit. What surprises most people about Arizona dates is not that they grow here, it is how dominant the state has become in their production. Second in the entire country, home to the world's largest plantation, a crop from the deserts of the Middle East found its second home here. Number 5 is where things get strange again, because most Americans have a clear mental picture of where lemons come from. California, Florida, maybe somewhere in the Mediterranean. Arizona is not on that list for most people, but it absolutely should be. Arizona ranks second in the entire country for lemon production. Yuma-grown lemons end up on fresh market shelves at grocery stores across the nation. The state has quietly built a lemon industry that most Americans interact with regularly, without ever knowing Arizona was involved. The timing of Arizona's lemon harvest is part of what makes the industry work so well. Arizona grows bring fruit to market between late August and early November. That window sits ahead of the main California and Mexico harvests, which means Arizona lemons face less competition and command better prices. The desert heat also accelerates fruit development. Lemons ripen faster in Arizona's intense summers, which gives growers more control over their harvest schedule. And the dry air reduces the fungal diseases that consistently damage citrus crops in more humid growing regions like Florida. A state famous for summers that push past 110 degrees became one of America's top lemon producers. The brutal heat that drives people indoors turns out to be a competitive advantage when you are growing citrus. Number 4 flips the logic completely in a different direction. Coming in at number 4 is leafy greens, lettuce, spinach, kale, the stuff that absolutely cannot handle heat. The crops that wilt and bolt the moment temperatures climb. Arizona grows them in massive quantities, and the country depends on them every single winter. During the winter months, Arizona supplies nearly all of the leafy greens consumed across the United States. Yuma is recognized as the winter lettuce capital of the world. That title is not informal. It reflects the reality of grocery store supply chains from roughly November through March. When the rest of the country is frozen and covered in snow, Yuma's winters are mild enough to grow cold-sensitive crops outdoors at scale. Average winter temperatures in Yuma sit in the low to mid-60s during the day. That is the sweet spot for leafy green production. The logic clicks into place once you understand the timing. Arizona is not trying to grow lettuce in August. It grows lettuce when the desert stops being a desert and becomes the mildest farmland in the country. The state essentially runs two completely different agricultural identities across the calendar year. Arizona ranks second nationally in the production of leafy greens like lettuce and spinach. In the colder months, nearly every bag of salad mix on store shelves traces back to Yuma. The desert state feeds the salad bowls of a frozen nation. Number 3 goes back centuries. At number 3, we have cotton. Cotton in a desert sounds counterintuitive, but Arizona's relationship with this crop runs over 100 years deep, and it is one of the most economically significant in the state. The story of how it got here is worth understanding. Around 1900, farmers noticed that Arizona's climate closely matched the conditions in Egypt, which was then the most respected cotton-growing region in the world. Egypt's long hot growing season, low humidity, and irrigation-fed agriculture translated almost directly to what Arizona already had. That observation led to the introduction of Pima cotton in Arizona. Pima cotton is named after the Pima people of southern Arizona, who helped cultivate it early on. It produces long, fine fibers that are softer and stronger than standard cotton varieties. It is used in luxury textiles worldwide. Cotton is one of Arizona's historic 5 Cs, the 5 industries that built the state's economy: cattle, citrus, climate, copper, and cotton. Of those 5, cotton remains a major economic force. The industry earns Arizona between $400 and $500 million annually and supports thousands of jobs. The same relentless sun and heat that makes Arizona summers feel unbearable is exactly what Pima cotton needs to produce its longest, strongest fibers. The crop does not fight the desert, it uses it, and the result is some of the most sought-after cotton fiber in the world. A desert state producing premium luxury cotton that ends up in high-end shirts and bedding sold globally. Cotton named partly after an Arizona native people, a crop with roots going back over a century in a place most people would not expect to find farmland at all. A desert state number 2 is going to sound wrong the moment you hear it, because juicy melons grown in a place that barely sees rain seems backwards in every possible way. But Arizona's melon industry is nationally significant, and the logic behind it is more straightforward than you might expect. Arizona ranks second in the United States in both cantaloupe and honeydew melon production. Second in the country. A state that gets less than 8 inches of rainfall per year in most areas has built a top 2 melon industry by national standards. That requires some explanation. Melons do not actually need rain. What they need is heat, sunshine, and controlled irrigation. Rain creates problems for melons. It invites disease, splits fruit, and disrupts the sugar concentration that makes a melon taste good. Arizona's dry heat combined with precision irrigation is close to ideal. Arizona gets more than 300 days of sunshine per year in many farming regions. That kind of sustained solar intensity drives photosynthesis at maximum rate through most of the calendar. Melon plants sitting under that kind of sun, fed by controlled irrigation, produce fruit that is consistently sweet and large. Arizona farms are planting and harvesting 12 months out of the year because the climate allows it. There is no hard freeze that shuts everything down. That means the state's agricultural output is almost never idle. Melons fit into that year-round production cycle in a way that makes economic sense. Guayule second in the country for both cantaloupe and honeydew. Built on sunshine and zero rain, Arizona's melon industry is a case study in how desert farming works when growers stop expecting rainfall and start engineering around it instead. Number 1 is where the story gets genuinely uncomfortable. At number 1, we have alfalfa. And if you have been following along and thinking about water this entire time, alfalfa is the crop that makes everything click into sharp focus, because alfalfa is one of the thirstiest crops grown anywhere on Earth. Alfalfa is a hay crop. It is grown primarily to feed dairy cattle and livestock. It requires several acre-feet of water per growing season. 1 acre-foot is roughly 326,000 gallons. Multiply that across thousands of acres, and you are talking about water consumption at a scale that is hard to picture. Forage crops, including hay and haylage, lead all other crop categories in total acreage across Arizona. Alfalfa is the dominant crop in that category. In a state with 4 deserts and almost no natural rainfall, the crop that takes up the most land is also the one that drinks the most water. Here is where the numbers become difficult to ignore. Agriculture consumes about 70% of Arizona's total water supply. The rivers and streams that the entire state depends on for survival are being drawn down primarily to grow crops, and alfalfa sits at the top of that water consumption list. Arizona is already in a serious water crisis. The Colorado River that supplies much of the state has been shrinking for decades. Cities are building water banks and cutting residential use. Water managers are watching the situation with genuine concern, and alfalfa keeps getting planted. There is more. A significant portion of Arizona's alfalfa is not even consumed inside the United States. It is exported in large quantities to countries including Saudi Arabia and China. Arizona is shipping bales of water-intensive hay, grown with desert water, to feed cattle on other continents. Saudi Arabia in particular has been actively sourcing alfalfa from Arizona after that country's own government restricted domestic alfalfa farming to preserve its groundwater. They moved their water problem to Arizona, and Arizona's agricultural economy accepted the arrangement. The foreign land ownership angle adds another layer. Foreign-owned agricultural operations have been pumping Arizona groundwater in some of the state's most water-stressed counties to grow alfalfa for export. State lawmakers have debated this issue for years with limited resolution so far. The argument for alfalfa is economic. It supports Arizona's dairy industry, which is itself a major part of the state's agricultural economy. Dairy farmers need reliable, affordable hay. Alfalfa grown locally keeps that supply chain intact. Eliminating it would create serious disruption across multiple industries. There is also the matter of long-established water rights. Many alfalfa growers hold senior water rights that legally predate almost every other claim on Arizona's water supply. Those rights are legally protected and politically difficult to challenge, even as conditions on the ground become more urgent. So here is where Arizona sits. A state in a long-term water crisis, sourcing 70% of its water for agriculture, with its largest crop category being one of the most water-intensive plants in commercial farming, and a significant portion of what gets grown leaves the country entirely. Alfalfa is not a surprise crop like wine or rubber. Nobody is amazed that hay grows in Arizona. The shock is the scale, the water math, and the direction the product travels after harvest. It is the agricultural choice that makes the least obvious sense of anything on this list. Every other crop in this countdown has a counterintuitive upside. Rubber from a desert shrub, wine from high elevation heat, pecans thriving in dry conditions. Each one has a logic that clicks once you understand the climate. Alfalfa's logic runs in the opposite direction entirely. It takes the resource Arizona has the least of, uses most of it, and sends a large share of the product overseas. And it remains deeply embedded in the state's farming economy because the infrastructure, the water rights, and the markets have been built around it for generations. Arizona is not unique in growing alfalfa. It is grown across the West. But nowhere else on this list does the crop-to-climate mismatch carry the stakes that it carries in Arizona. In a state already watching its water future with alarm, alfalfa is the choice that raises the hardest questions. The other 9 crops on this list tell a story about adaptation, about farmers finding ways to make a hostile environment work in their favor. Alfalfa tells a different story. It tells a story about momentum, about economics, and about how hard it is to change course once a system is built. Rubber from desert shrubs, wine from high desert vineyards, the world's largest pecan orchard, top 2 rankings in dates, lemons, melons, and leafy greens, Pima cotton tracing back to Egypt's farming legacy. Arizona's agricultural identity is built on contradictions that keep paying off. And then at the top of the list sits alfalfa, the crop that makes the least sense. The one that drinks the most water in the driest state. The one being grown partly for export to countries that ran out of water growing it themselves. The one nobody talks about enough. 10 crops, a desert state, in a farming economy that somehow ranks near the top nationally, in categories most people would never guess. Arizona does not farm like a desert is supposed to farm. It farms like a state that decided the rules did not apply to it. That tension between what Arizona has and what Arizona grows is not going away. If anything, it is getting sharper. The water is under more pressure every year. The crops keep going in the ground. And the desert keeps producing things that have no business growing there at all.